Good morning. Good morning to all of you. Thank you very much for being here. We know we are finalizing COP28. We know that all of you are exhausted. So we can say that you are COP28 survivors, almost the last 2 days. And that's why thank you very much for being here. Today, we would like to reflect together of two actors of a same reality, farmers or food producers and consumers. Yesterday, Alberto, that is here from COPROFAM, the president of COPROFAM, told yesterday during the food day that a very simple thing, but very straight to the point. Climate change is affecting crops, yes, but this is not just a problem of farmers, because we all eat food, we all consume food. So today we will have the space to explore these connections and common strategies to tackle climate crisis. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Belén Sitoler, Deputy Director of the World Rural Forum.
Hello, good morning to all the panelists and participants. And as Elena said, thank you for being with us today in this exhausting last part of the COP. We are excited to organize this event with Consumers International. For those that perhaps don't know the World Rural Forum so well, we're a global network mainly composed of family farmers organizations, a very important regional farmers organization from the 5 continents, representing more than 35 million family farmers. And we are here a delegation of representatives of all these networks, and some of them are here today. So I think it's going to be a very good opportunity to have a reflection among all of us. For the World Rural Forum, it is a priority to strengthen the bond between family farmers and consumers. We are convinced that this collaboration can be catalytic in the transformation of our food systems. And on the one hand, I would like to recall that the decade of family farming that was recognized by the United Nations General Assembly, all countries in the world agreed that family farming was key in protecting the environment, while ensuring food security and promoting inclusive development. So family farming has many functions to fulfill the 2030 development SDGs agenda. And at the same time, consumers also play a very powerful role in the climate responses and in food system transformation, among many other things, but of course by choosing local and seasonal products from family farming. That is a policy choice, let's say, with a lot of impact on climate action. And in fact, 20% of greenhouses in the food system come from transporting food from the farm to the table. There's a too long way for our food products to get to the table of consumers, and 20% of greenhouses come from that. So that is a very relevant point to support local food production and consumption too. And to transform our food systems, I think that we are going to talk about that today, but just to give to set the scene a bit, we've been thinking together, that we need for sure to support family farming and their livelihoods, but to shorten supply chains, to support agroecology, we will see it today too, and other sustainable agriculture practices, and something very important to strengthen consumers' rights to adequate and affordable foods, and fair prices for producers and for consumers. So today we have a great opportunity to get inspiration from the initiatives that you will present and reflect among all of us on how this collaboration between family farmers and consumers can be scaled up with the right policies and funding. And for sure, we believe at the World Rural Forum that this alliance between family farmers, consumers, along with all the key stakeholders, because we are not alone in the food systems chain, of course, but this can make a real difference. We are a bit concerned about the global agreements, that they are not going so well in these COP negotiations, but we can from our sides also take action and make a real difference for the planet, for food security, and something that is very important and we cannot forget, I think, is the reduction of inequalities, because we live in a very unequal world. So I am eager to start the session and listen to our panelists, and of course to the discussions and reflections that we will have all together. Thank you, and I invite Charlie now to give some words.
Thanks, Belen. Thanks, Elena. Thanks all for coming. Really excited for this session. Something we've been thinking about for a long time is how do we do more on this connection between producers and consumers. We're here in the Food Systems Pavilion. It's really what it brings to mind to me is that whole food system, from production, distribution to consumption, not tackling these in silos and not being kind of pitted against one another, especially as both grassroots communities, but thinking how we can align and be a powerful force for change collectively. I think we're going to hear today so many of the frameworks we use to think about kind of building better food systems, from agroecology to local urban food systems, are all rooted, all have a really strong basis in this principle of farmer-consumer linkages, partnerships, connections. And there's really a lot of value I think we could achieve by doing that at a political level, being here at COP, right down to national multi-stakeholder bodies and decision-making processes. I think by speaking collectively, farmers and consumers can achieve a lot more. We can make sure that we're being heard. And again, resisting that temptation for other actors in the food system to kind of pose that dichotomy, to pose a binary between farmers' rights and consumers' rights. And definitely that's something we're really keen to challenge. The next step beyond that, something we're also really keen to explore, to hear about. If anyone, certainly in the audience, I think we'll be hearing later, keen to get any questions or interventions on your own experiences. But it's the value of kind of direct linkages as well, not just in forums like this, but in the marketplace, bringing farmers and consumers closer together. And this is something that's already happening. I think there's an important role for government that we'll hear about as a mediator. We have examples from our member organizations. To introduce Consumers International, for those who aren't familiar, we have about 200 member organizations in over 100 countries worldwide, ranging from big national consumer groups to real more grassroots right to food focused organizations. So for example, our member in El Salvador has a program with the government of El Salvador, where there's a kind of digital platform for connecting producers direct to consumers, buying goods from small scale producers that are kind of more local, better for the planet, better for people, a fair price on both sides, so a really strong benefit there. But also, urging farmers and consumers not to wait for government, for business to provide that gap where it's not available, but to do it themselves. We have a great example from our member in India, based in Mumbai, who for decades now has run a collective distribution program, providing food to tens of thousands of consumers across the area, buying direct from local small-scale farmers, prioritizing nutritious, fresh, sustainable food. And has been replicated by another member in Zimbabwe. So there's already examples out there. I'm sure loads more that I'd love to hear today. If anyone has any ideas on what exists already, what we'd love to see, how we get there to build that. But I think I'll wrap up there, and looking forward to our panel.
Thank you very much. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you very much. I would like to ask the panelists to come with me, please. Today we have all the panelists. So we can sit down, four of us, four of you here. Where you would like to sit down? Here, it's okay. I mean, all of you will speak. Today we have the opportunity to to share ideas between actors that normally don't do, and we think that that's the good opportunity of this event. So first, I would like to start with Oliver Oliveros, a coordinator of the Agroecology Coalition and head of the Coalition Secretariat. To start, I would like to ask you, local linkages and direct linkages between farmers and consumers are key to agroecology. Why are these connections so important for building resilient and equitable food systems?
Well, thanks for the question, and welcome everyone for the COP28 survivors. we need to keep it going, right? I think it's really, really key. When we talk about agroecology, the focus is almost always on the production side. And we tend to forget that when we talk about agroecology, it's from production to consumption. It's really that long chain approach, because who will eat and buy the products that are produced in an agroecological way if we don't really move down further the line? So I think that one is really to amplify that connection, that it doesn't stop in promoting sustainable approaches to producing food. We need to create that demand, and that demand lies in the power of consumers. Right? We can learn from different other experiences, but I think it's really important to establish that point. When we talk about agroecology, it doesn't stop on production. It has to go all the way down. So when we say agroecology is a different paradigm, precisely because it tackles that whole chain, that's one. The second part is, and it's related to that, is it allows us to really sensitize the public, right? As you said, we're all consumers, we're all eaters. Right? And if we are consumers and we're all eaters, then we need to know, what the hell are we eating? Where is it coming from? Is it safe? And that brings me to my other point. It's about building the trust before where food is coming from. And it's building the trust between farmers who are producing the food and the consumers who are eating the food. You don't want to eat something that you know is poison. You want to know what is coming into your mouth, especially when you have kids, for example. It's really, really key. So you are able to establish, by bringing in this linkage, not only the production side, the consumer side, but the trust that is important, which is becoming more and more problematic now in an age where fake news and globalization, etc. I mean, it's really difficult to know where things are coming from. And trust is an important part, and we don't get to talk about it. We tend to be focused on technical conversations. At the core of it is trust. And related to that obviously is, when we speak of agroecology, some of the key principles are equity, fairness, and justice. And so when we talk about equity and fairness, and we talk about food and the producers, we need to think about the conditions in which foods are produced by the farmers, by the food system actors. Are they being paid adequately? And we cannot take it away from the issues around human rights and social justice, right? If farmers are not paid properly, what do you expect? People, and especially young people, wouldn't want to go to the farm anymore because it's all seen as backward, they don't earn well, et cetera, et cetera. So we really need to promote and establish that point, that by doing farming and doing it properly, you're able to build trust, you're able to build, equity, and you need to ensure that people in the farming community are really earning, decent wages that allow them to live decently, as everyone would. So I really see this all encompassing, and really, really important to highlight that linkage between the farming and consumption.
Thank you very much. You have already talked a bit about how the linkages would look like through these principles. Do you have any example that you have seen in the coalition on this kind of new paradigm linkages in the territory?
Well, the most common example that we often cite is in Andhra Pradesh, right? Where you could see a really scaled up, millions of farmers really adopting agroecology. They don't call it agroecology, but who cares, right? It is based on the principle that it is really equitable, resilient, and promoting social justice, etc. So out of those million people adopting agroecology in almost 4,000 villages, and they're able to show that 50%, they've seen 50% increase in the production and 20% increase in profits and income, or maybe the other way around, but it doesn't matter, it's positive, that's the point. And there's only not that example, we probably need to look outside of examples, and two things that come to mind is the organic farming, organic movement, right? So 20, 30 years ago, who talks about organic farming? Who can afford organic products? It's only the rich and those who are, and it's really seen as a niche products. But now you go to supermarkets and you could see alleys and alleys of organically produced products. But also, there's also the challenge, but because the more you scaled up, you could also see industrially grown organic products, which is counterproductive, right? So we really need to see, while we are trying to promote, let's say, organic products or agroecology products, we really need to be mindful of how we're able to produce it. Is it still sustainable? Is it still equitable? Is it still within the real principles that we try to produce? So that's one. The other part that I was thinking of is in the wine sector, but probably not only. So when you consume your wine, either from France, from Italy, or Spain, you'll always have these geographic indicators. Or it's from Bordeaux, or it's from Montalcino, or it's from this part. You could really see there the link between the source of food anchored to territory, and there goes also the fierté, no? I don't know, the pride of, this product comes from my region, it comes from my area. So it brings with it not only, identity, but culture. And I think these are really important elements of food and food systems that we could take up. So those are examples I see that we could see. These are not necessarily perfect and nothing is, but I think we could learn from those, avoid pitfalls, and see how we could improve building forward.
Thank you very much. I was taking note of some of the key words that we have heard. For example, the connections, the change of the paradigm, the confidence, the organic farming, identity, culture. These are the kind of things that we can connect when we talk to each other. Thank you very much for sharing with us. Now I would like to give the floor to Kyle Stice, Executive Director of the Pacific Farmers Organization. He's also a World Rural Forum member. And I would like to ask you, from the farmer side, how can engaging local consumers directly be of benefit to family farmers? If you can share with us.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think it's important that we put it into context. So our islands sit in a huge expanse of ocean. According to FAO, over 90% of our population live in rural areas. And of those 90%, 70% derive their primary income from agriculture. So in fact, the rural people are at the center. And our analysis shows that there are really three interrelated threats for these rural people, which is basically 70% of all of our population. And these are climate change, food security, and non-communicable diseases. So these are, we call them a nexus of threats, and they're all interrelated, and they have incredible consequences for rural people at different times. Of course, climate change, when a cyclone comes through, it's devastating. But food security, when we had COVID-19, the boats stopped coming for a number of weeks. The airplanes, food systems were disrupted. And then increasingly, non-communicable diseases. We have some of the highest rates of diabetes and heart disease in all of the world. As a regional organization of farmers, we have developed basically 4 action areas to address these threats. And the first is a focus on traditional crops, and especially traditional staple crops. So these are cassava, taro, sweet potato, and prioritizing those over our imported staples like rice and wheat that are contributing to food insecurity and non-communal. So that's the first priority. The second priority is focusing on improved traditional farming systems. So for not only the crops that we grow, but the way that we grow them, the emphasis is on our traditional farming systems, but being able to use Western science to improve those. And then the third priority is on focusing on local value chains. So taking these traditional crops, grown in improved traditional farming systems and developing local value chains. So how can we process our traditional staples to make them more accessible to consumers? How can we enhance their ability to be more readily prepared and accessible? And then the fourth one is using farmer organizations as an extension of government and development partners to be able to really support all of that transition. And I'll just give you one example. We have a tree in the Pacific called the breadfruit. I don't know if you are familiar with the breadfruit, but literally it is a large starch that grows on a tree. And it is incredibly climate resilient. But it is thought of as it's like a forgotten food. It's like a food that now people think of, oh, we only eat that when we don't have rice or bread. And so as a network, this is a crop that we are wanting to support our farmers to produce. And it is grown in a traditional farming system. But we're also thinking about how can we take this product, which has a very short shelf life, is quite limited in the way that we traditionally eat it, just boil it or roast it and eat it. How can we develop these local value chains that can make it more and more accessible? And how can we prioritize that with government and development partners as opposed to some of the pavilions that I've been sitting in where we have Monsanto and we have Bayer talking about these GMO and improved products, crops that are there to help save the day in climate change. So these are kind of the four important areas. And again, I think in our region, the consumers and the producers, they are very much one and the same, and they are the rural people. And so we kind of think about it in terms of that nexus of threats, and then those are our strategies for addressing those.
Thank you very much, Kyle. Here again, we have heard from what food, but also how, and how to connect with the local, and we have heard another keyword, breadfruit. Breadfruit. Maybe I haven't pronounced it well, sorry. Yeah. But it's interesting because it's a real example on how we can think from the beginning from the production to the market. Thank you very much, Kyle. Now I'm going too fast maybe, no? I'm okay? I would like now to give the floor to Lana Wedgenant. I will give you the floor to say your surname better than me. She's coming from Act for Food and Act for Change. And we know that at COP, at the different COPs, your organization represents young people, farmers, but also consumers that work collectively together, which is a great example for all of us, a great example coming from the young people now. And I would like to ask you if you have navigated these different but and yet aligned perspectives, and how can it influence in all the food systems? What can we learn from you from that perspective?
Thank you, and it's Lana Bergenant. But that's okay. So it was just mentioned that rural people also work between producers and consumers. And from young people, that's a point that we've been mentioning several times in our advocacy, our partnerships, that we hope others will follow this example. That, for instance, with Act for Food, Act for Change, it's young people from the health community, from the producers, from the consumers, from human rights, climate change advocacy, nutrition. We all come together, and we had a global youth pledge of over 160,000 young people from around the world. A short pledge that we all agreed on. Basically, this is what we want from food systems, this is what we're going to do, and this is what we ask governments and businesses to do. So I think that's kind of showing that in our community and from the younger generation, we are able to come together from all backgrounds that are interested in food and have this agreement. We also had the Actions for Change, which was part of that effort from Act for Food. which was we started with 17 actions that were kind of the top ones, and then we had a voting process with young people from around the world, from those who signed the pledge, to agree on top 10 youth actions for change, so that we know when we go to these international forums, for instance, we don't speak on behalf of ourselves personally, but we speak on behalf of hundreds of thousands of young people from around the world, because we know that it's a privilege to be in spaces like this, that it's not, usually the young people from the most rural areas, from the most frontline communities, who are unfortunately usually the least able to access these places. So let's make sure that when we have these opportunities, we are getting the input from as many young people as possible. And that means that we talk to both sides and also all the other interests that go into food, right? When we also think of, for instance, health and human rights and those other interests, aside from consumption and production. But it's always been clear to us that there should not be this division, and there never has been for the youth community. So I really hope that more people can look to that, because I can also give an example of the impact that we've been able to have. For instance, if you've noticed that the catering at this COP is more climate conscious than it has ever been in the past, that is because young people came together as an entire community, not only in food and agriculture, but on behalf of global children and youth from around the world. And we're able to send a letter to the COP28 president talking about how food and agriculture impacts climate change, and that needs to be acknowledged in the food served at the conference itself. So I think that speaks to when we come together across communities and are able to speak with a more singular voice, we can really have a bigger impact than we could have had individually.
Thank you very much. And we have, what do this organization and the organized youth movement that you are working with, the future food systems, how do you look at them like with these connections? Could you tell us a bit more from this movement? How do you see the future food systems?
So one point that we have advocated also is that young voices are critical for the future food system, as we will be not only the consumers of the future, but also the producers, right? And that's a conversation that we have often in climate and food forums, is that we need to make sure that we have young people still in agriculture, and then still going into food production. And then also when we look at the consumption side, for instance, Oliver mentioned that there is more organic products. A lot of youth advocacy has also gone into more plant-based products, which we've also seen in markets and in shelves a lot more than ever before. So I think some of that advocacy speaks to really acknowledging climate. That's one of the biggest priorities for my generation, because that will really impact young people. And when we talk about food, production, consumption, climate and sustainability is something completely inseparable for us.
Thank you very much, Lana. We have heard now different words: human rights, nutrition, organized youth movement, another vision to this relationship. No? Now I would like to give the floor to Milvo Prevendello Di Domenico, Environment and Sustainable Development Secretariat of the State of Guayas. And I would like to ask you, coming from local government, what can you do from your local government to, from the urban area, I think, what can you do to connect these both sides? And if you have any example from the state of Guayas?
Right. So pleasure to be here and speaking to you guys. We heard how these linkages work. We heard the challenges and how it's done by the producer perspective. And we also heard about the engagement of young people in this process. So you see, it's a very complex but needed solution. And when we look at Brazil and we look at Goiás state, for you that don't know where Goiás is in Brazil, Brasília is right in the center, and Goiás is the state that Brasília is within. So it's very centered in Brazil. These discussions about circular food systems. It's kind of new, you know, when you have the name. But it's important to mention that the ways of living, the ways of producing food, the ways of trading food is it's already very dated from the past. But these things, once we have the development of cities and people moving to cities, we kind of tend to be a part of that. And forgetting when you go to the supermarket and you buy food, you lose the relationship to go to the street market to talk to the person who you bought, who the producer that produced the food, you know him by name. You know, when you're buying cheese and he says, no, I produced this cheese today, like very early in the day. So you lose that connection, and that this connection lost is something that when we're talking about developing public policies kind of go into fading, right? Because you don't have that connection. So if people that are in government don't have this connection to food, to the producers, it's very hard to engage in this kind of conversations with all the day-to-day basis and what you have to be doing in public relations. So there are some examples in Brazil. Just recent, I think it was last year, there was a relationship within the European Union with Embrapa, which is an institute of research in Brazil, a very recognized one. And they developed a partnership with some major cities. So Curitiba is one example. In Curitiba, it's a city in Paraná, which is more more south of Brazil. And they have food security policy. So it's, I think it has like 20 years already. So they are developing this for a long time. And one example of what they have there is when you're producing food, when you're distributing food, there's a lot of food waste, food that was not used or will not be safe tomorrow. So that they get that food and they have the logistics to distribute that food or process that food in a way that you can distribute to people that are in vulnerable communities or vulnerable situation. So food is not wasted. So this food that would go to the waste now has value, you know, and that aggregates for the producer as well. So they have a very, you know, incentives for street markets. That's one thing that we have in Goiás, in Goiânia, which is the capital of Goiás. It's known by being the capital of street markets. So you can go to a street market on Monday, you can go on Tuesday, of Wednesday, just change locations. So they have a very net of these markets. But one thing that we have to look on developing these policies is making sure that the producer is paying fairly, that all this waste, if it's not being distributed, is then going to composting bins, for example. So really, these policies have to be developed. Another example, in Santarém, Pará, which is very north, they consume a lot of fish. So they develop a policy where they are ensuring that the fish that is being bought is being bought by local producers. So people that live there and have this relation with nature and the ways of fishing, for example, and they are ensuring that all the fish is being bought from these people. And another example also is in Maricá, Rio de Janeiro. Rio de Janeiro, you probably know better. It's a city where they have a lot of agroecology, you know, where courts exactly in the middle of the city. So they have like 5. And they engage in education with the community, right? So they do community harvesting, community seed change, you know, all these kind of things. So they promote the community to actually be planting these seeds on their houses and households. So it's very interesting. So these are all examples, and this relationship with the European Union and Embrapa, they developed a laboratory, a urban laboratory for food policies. So all these cities that were contemplated by this partnership, they have this consortium, and they developed all the studies and the public policies in this laboratory, applied for, of course, the context of that city where it's located, and the economy and the environment, the biome, etc. So these are some examples of how it's being done. And with all these conversations, everything that I'm learning here, I'm going to take back to Goiás and hopefully promote more of this kind of action in the territory. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So cities, supermarkets, street markets, connections, joint connections between different governments, policies, research. I think that we have a lot to discuss about, but now I would like to open the floor. We have heard here some examples coming from the different sides, but I would like to hear from the floor if you have some examples of other sorry, again, examples, or other insights on what do you see the connection and what should be done to empower these connections. We have heard about policies. I haven't heard the word funding. Maybe someone wants to tell something about that. Recognition, maybe. Now I would like to open the floor to some of you, any of you.
Thank you. Hi, I represent the Georgian Farmers Association, the country Georgia. I can share several examples, but I want to start with partnerships part. The majority of the farmers in Georgia, like elsewhere, I think is the case in the majority of the countries represented here. We also deal with the smallholder farmers mainly. So, and they really had the trouble of selling the product always, since the agrarian markets, as we call them, have been abolished. Gradually, and more retailers coming in, and the smallholder farmers had the real difficulty to prove the safety of the product, and the retailers would not be interested. So the country is still very much dependent on the import. Around 70% still comes from other countries. So what we tried to do is what we did it actually like 4 years ago. We went to the HoReCa market. We started from hotel and restaurant chain, big ones, and started talking about the CSR and their commitment to the community. And they got interested in the, providing the local produce to the tourists in their respective restaurants or cafes. But they said they've tried it several times, but because of the problem with the continuous supply, they wouldn't manage to do that, and then they switched to import again. And to tackle that problem, we then went to the distribution company, one of the largest one, who also got interested and said, okay, if you're able to provide us the list of farmers or help us to connect with those, that we can put the list together and based on the demand from the HoReCa. And if there is a sufficient quantity that they require, we can then arrange all the logistics. So that took us a while, like 2 years, to settle this whole value chain. And then we, from our side, what we did is we went to the farmers to get them interested, and also developed a local certification scheme that would be a proof of quality for the retailers and the HoReCa as well. We're now working with retailers as well. And that network has expanded widely. It's like over 1,000 farmers at this point, providing on a regular basis, supplying the largest hotel and restaurant chains in the capital mainly at this point. And now we are doing the same with the retailers, but then here comes another problem, another chain of what you call packaging and labeling, which is also costly for the farmers. And now what we're trying to do is to bring in the donor interventions and help them through the projects to arrange all this packaging and the quality mark or whatever certification they require to enter the supermarket chains. So that's one side. Another side is also to deal with smallholders without improving too much of a quality standard, but making sure it's really safe. They check it like the residue levels and very simple standard issues by themselves through their mobile app. It's an online platform, a digital platform, home delivery, which is also connected to the farmers through us. So they also deliver the food to people living in the cities. So that's about partnerships.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you have any comment about what she was sharing with us. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say the role of farmer organizations in linking producers to the market. I think that's a fantastic example.
Thank you. Yeah.
I just want to share some of the thoughts what you were telling about, especially in the street food. Because in my experience in Sri Lanka, we have promoting. I'm representing a Lanka Organic Agriculture Movement, and which is a farmer-led the initiative, and we have nearly 7,000 farmers together. Uh, what we did was I want to bring some of the inspirations to here, because when we had a problem with the marketing, especially in the COVID time, you know, the street vendors play a major role, because in the roadside they can sell out things, but you have to have a trust about them. You know, when the COVID happened, the people were buying from the locally, and therefore they had a very good time. When the COVID is over, the local authorities and came, oh, you don't have a license, how can you do this? And that is how they performing, no? The always local authorities looking at the other way of. And what we did, we talked to the local authorities, look, if we can develop a bylaws ourselves, why we can't recognize these people? Because they're also providing a very good service to the local farmers and same time put to the consumers. And we are talking today in the food miles and big things, but this is where the street vendors can play a major role. And it is a necessity also them to understand about the hygiene, health conditions, and therefore you have to facilitate some of those things. What I did in my organization with my other hat with the PN Sri Lanka, we were talked to the local authorities, and we same time we talked to the small these street vendors, and we trained them into the hygienic conditions levels and how to appearing in the good quality and good selling practices. And the way we talk about the lawyers and us about to develop about on the bylaws. And now the local authorities are recognizing these people, and it is help to the farmers and as well as to the consumers. And this way we can bring the attention of the both side and providing a quality service.
Thank you very much. Wait, do you want to, yeah?
No, just very quickly, a reaction to that one. It underscores really the importance of local government units, and which related to that, not only in terms of local policies and local organizations, but we could also link this. I don't know, how many of you have kids? How many of you has kids at grade school who eats in the canteen? What do they eat? Do they like what they eat? My son says, it's not good. So this is also the power of how we could influence procurement, public procurement in public spaces, particularly school canteens. So it allows us to link really the supply, the kids growing aware that what they should be eating is something that is healthy, and then that allows you also to really influence and make sure that you have a stable product of markets. I know some few cities, like Copenhagen, has managed to develop the procurement policy where 70 to 80% of the food that is served in public canteens are locally sourced and 80% organic. In Milan, the same thing. Through the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, they come up with policy that is similar. In France, in Montpellier, it's also the same case. So I think we probably need to expand and see how these local procurement policies are being made and partner with them and see how they are doing it and able to influence it. So we're able to, again, link this producer and consumer to the procurement and local governance issues.
Yeah, and in fact, there is a coalition. Oh, sorry. The School Meals Coalition that is working on that.
I mean, that's very well put. Just want to comment that it's very important to have some sort of policy basis to so the food security kind of. So there's some cities that have that, many others don't. So having some sort of law like that is a start. And what you mentioned about canteens in schools, we have a lot of public schools, and also hospitals. That's one other major thing. You need fresh, nutritious food in the hospitals. So having this linkage with the producers, it's very important. And I think going forward, what you're saying, to have this representation and this connection with the producers developing these laws and the people who are selling the food in the street markets, one thing that is very important also when having this sort of policy is the marketing, the public marketing, when the government is putting those people, these processes, the intentions of going to the street market, to consume on the street market. Other thing is to promote all this food that is going to the public canteens, so the school canteens, to these hospitals. I think this is a way to make it more sensible, more reachable for the community to understand that this is a thing and that is going on. So yeah, just comment on that. That is
a win-win, no?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We have time for one more question. Yandika?
Hello, I'm Mendica, a dairy farmer from Spain. And I want to share with you guys a failure story, because I feel that we always share success stories, but so that way we can learn a little bit. 12 to 13 years ago, 10 farmers from our area, we create a cooperative and try to sell our milk directly to the consumer by those vending machines that you go with your bottle and put €1 inside and you get the milk. And it was a complete disaster. At the beginning it was really good, but then it was a disaster. And I think that we have to focus on the consumer too, because there were two main problems at that time. The first one, I think, is that the consumer didn't have the maturity that it has today, probably, and the sensibility to the farmer and the local community and stuff. And then the other thing is that it has to be easy for the consumer, because if it works good that you use your bottle and it's always the same bottle, but you have to clean it, and the consumer wants easy things. So that was not a success story, but probably could make things somebody.
Maybe we learn more from these kind of stories than from success stories. Do you want to react to?
Just want to comment, like, one thing. So if you live in global south, hot, right? So many people don't want to go to the street market because it's hot. It's just one thing, right? It's so like simple, but it's yeah. I mean, and also another thing, if you are going by car, if you don't have public transport, that is a good one in the city. So you don't want to park your car too far. Those little things, it's very important to think about this. So if the government can have a structure for the public market, right? Like a covered up, that is resistant to rain, for example. All these kind of things matters as well. So yeah, it's and the easy of access, right? So the people, if you're selling milk, your bottle has to be very well cleaned, right? So it can't be a little, so just commenting.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this interesting conversation. I feel at the beginning we thought, oh, maybe the space is too small, but it's good because we have the opportunity to be more, I know, it's like a confidence, no? So thank you very much for your time, for being here, and for sharing with us your thoughts and experiences. And now I would like to go straight to the closure of the event. We don't have many time in this COP28 either. So I would like to ask you to sit down in your seats. Thank you very much. And I will go back to Charlie. And he has opened the second, so I will give him the floor to close the first.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, me again. I think really illustrates what we just heard about consumers needing to do more to be engaged as well. There's not enough consumer advocates here at COP. I think a really interesting point, though, is that we heard throughout is how consumers are so aligned with all these other groups that obviously all producers, all farmers are consumers. The point on youth, bringing together producer and consumer representatives. The same is true in kind of women's movement at COP and at other processes. Same is true of indigenous groups. Often that's in fact where some of these links are strongest and most effectively articulated. So making sure we're learning from them, amplifying, and that everyone is paying attention to that. I really enjoyed the panel. So much to think about, coming away with more questions than solutions as always, but really valuable. I love the failure story. That's something I was thinking about, barriers to scaling up. There's so many, we think about best practices, like great grassroots initiatives that are doing this really well and doing well locally, but never achieving that kind of scale, never being replicated or kind of reaching the huge numbers of farmers, of consumers that we'd love them to. Many great initiatives that don't even get to that point, that don't fail, that don't become viable even at that local level. Thinking about, and I'd love to think more about what some of the actions and things that we can do to help achieve that and to make these more viable. I think the point about digital was a really interesting one. Is there a way of using the technology available to connect producers and consumers without relying on kind of corporate control of digital public goods, digital infrastructure? Is there a kind of more decentralized way of doing that? I think often it can feel a bit anathema to agroecology and to local food systems, but it doesn't have to be. There must be solutions that let us use that to benefit us. And then, I think just thinking about how the solutions, so many solutions to so many of the problems that we're facing here at COP are rooted and can be solved by a kind of, it's not a new thing, you know. I think sometimes we have to explain why we're having an event on connecting producers and consumers. Kind of, we're inherently connected. The food is produced to be eaten. The consumers depend on the producers. But increasingly, we see food systems that are more and more concentrated and import dependent on these huge, long value chains. I think interesting to think about how we preserve historic relationships between producers and consumers, but also aim higher. What can we do even better in this modern world, in future food systems, to build and to strengthen those connections? Loads of really, really valuable thoughts there, and keen to continue this conversation. And we were saying before we started that there's no point having an event where the end goal is the event. We're keen to do more on this. I know we're going to continue working with World Rural Forum, keen to continue working with others as well to bring that into other platforms. I think the first step is breaking down the silo between producers and consumers, but it's not enough to just be talking to each other. There's so many other actors out there that we can learn from, that can learn from us. Really keen to continue that. I'll pass it to Lara.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you to all of you. We learn a lot, as Charlie was saying. I will start by saying that I realize that we are who we are, no? Consumers and producers. We are a very power voice, no? And we are part of the solution, a big part of the solution. I was in my notes beforehand, but all the farmers at the end are consumers, and even it is something that is difficult to understand how poverty is in the rural areas, no? The majority of the people who suffer from hunger are in the rural areas, and even they are farmers, no? So I would say that hearing these experiences and strategic areas that were pointed out, no, agroecology and strategic area, we wish to make a connection and to have a systemic approach. I will say, no, that is a big part of the solution. Forgotten crops or crops that are not enough. Use in the countries, no? Youth, circular food system, street food, public procurement, that is key important, no? Food waste, avoiding food waste. There are a lot of very good examples, so we cannot say, I don't know how to solve. We have the solutions. We need to scale up, no, in order to reduce inequality, address all the SDGs in different perspectives. You underlined during the experience, social, economic, cultural, environmental, nutrition aspects crises are there, no, in the solutions that you comment, no. One thing that was underlined, and we always underline that the importance of public policy from the local to the global level, because sometimes the farmers are making or proposing some solutions, no. But if we don't have the support from the government, we cannot address, no. And something that we learned during the last 2 years, speaking with consumers and trying to work in the different regions, we need to build the trust and to share the information between the consumers and the farmers. If we don't have the information, maybe the consumers are doing not the good no decisions. So this is my learning, and we will continue working with consumers. We have a big conference next year, March 2024, in order to put family farmers at the center of the solution. No? We will bring farmers, consumers, local governments, international organizations. How can really farmers can be at the center of the solutions of the sustainability, no? How to scale up their capacities, no? And we think that doing together with consumers is the key element, no? And this is something that we learned from the COP. We are not very positive, as we mentioned at the beginning, with the COP results, but we are very positive on the linkage that we did during the conference, and we are thinking as farmers and consumers that at least we can take actions from here. No, now we think we gain or we address the narrative. The narrative is there. We need the action. No, that should go with the narrative, no, and the commitments. So count with us, count with the collaboration between us, and we will see around here. Thank you, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So now, running from going with this final, going from why to how, I would like to close the event. Thank you very much for being here, COP28 survivors, and see you the last day. Tomorrow we have also another event that will be for the Masters COP28 survivors in the Food and Agriculture Pavilion at 11 o'clock. And also Endica will be sharing some other examples coming from a young farmer in the north of Spain. And we would like to see you all there. Thank you very much.